Welcome, everyone. If you're anything like me, I think that your head is probably spinning. You're probably exhausted, but full of inspiration, and I've had amazing conversations all week. As Faniel said, this is going to be a much more relaxed session, smaller group. This is the core of the community, the folks that have been using and working on the platform for many years. So insiders only today, except for Phil. First thing I wanted to say is merci beaucoup to our hosts, Remy and Paris Telecom. Thank you very much for having us in this lovely space. It's been an honor to be here. I wanted to also say thank you to Unicon for sponsoring us. Really appreciate you being present, but also supporting the conference. And thank you to all of our other sponsors as well. I want to take a quick look so I make sure that I don't miss anyone. So Owls Neo, Intella, OpenCraft, Raccoon Gang, EdX, and Edley sponsored as contributing sponsors. Schema and Abstract Technology as friends of Open edX, and our media sponsors were Class Central and On EdTech. So thank you for your participation in the event. And I also included in these thanks, I wanted to thank everyone in the room because you're all members of this community and contributors to this amazing project. So when I start to talk through some of the things that we've accomplished in the last year, when I say we, I mean we. I'm not talking about Axum. I'm not talking about any small team. I'm talking about this broad community. And you're all vital and fundamental parts of it. So thank you for what you do. I want to start by grounding us in the mission of Open edX. I think everybody's familiar with this. I changed some verbs a little bit to make it a little bit easier to read, but I think everyone has seen this many times. We aspire to democratize education and empower advances in learning by providing open source software to the world. That broadly is our mission. And I wanted to start by asking an important question, and I hope somebody in the room will know the answer to this. It's a simple question, I think, which is, how far in kilometers does light travel in 333.564 seconds? Anybody know? Top of your head. Around 100 million, give or take. Yeah. So does anyone know what the significance of this number is, actually? Ooh, Serena.
It's the number of learners that have learned on Open edX.
That's right. I mean, there's a little bit of black magic to how we keep track of this. I'll be perfectly honest with you. But I'm pretty confident in this number. And the site that got us over the 100 million mark, we actually keep track of sites. We have a ledger where we keep track of them based on publicly available information. And it was the 13 million learners on the NSDC platform that we recently connected with that got us over what we estimate to be the total impact in terms of users or learners served on the platform. And again, back to thanking you, it is the work of this community that has made that possible. And I think that's just an amazing, amazing outcome. So thank you for everything. Needed a fireworks slide because here we are on the 4th of July. So I want to thank any of those of you, including myself, who traveled from the US on a national holiday to be here. We'll celebrate Bastille Day in a few more days. All right, so again, this is going to be a much more relaxed session. In past versions of the State of Open edX, we've talked through a ton of slides showing data about growth and pull requests and things like that. We're not going to do that today. Rather, in about a week, we're going to publish the impact report that we've been working on, which will have all of those metrics that you're familiar with in it, and we can talk about that. We'll spend today talking about some summary stuff and then having more of a conversation. All right. We'll present some selected progress on some of the things that I think are most important. We'll highlight those. We'll summarize the go-to-market research that Axum conducted this year, very high-level summary. We'll review what was delivered in the product this year. and then we'll discuss the upcoming TOC elections, and finally, we'll discuss a proposed distinguished contributor program. And those last two items, the first one will be kind of highlighted by Xavier Antoviaque, who will come up and join us, and the last one will be Natalia from Raccoon Gang and Vineet. I think, is Vineet here? I haven't seen him this morning. Vineet is coming, awesome. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to highlight was we always talk about, or we have for the last few years, the elephant factor, which is this way of measuring the sustainability and the health of open source projects. And in 2021, or actually even up to 2023, the elephant factor was 1. And that means that there's one organization that is contributing over 50% of the code to the open source project. And that means that there's a great deal of risk if that one organization leaves the community or loses interests or changes strategy. So we've been focused very intentionally on raising that number. And in 2024, it was 2. In the last quarter of 2024, we achieved 3. So we're seeing progress. But what we've learned is elephants move slowly. It's not as easy as we'd hoped it might be, and we're still working on it. This will continue to be a focus. Yep. All right, so we have a multi-pronged strategy for how we are going to scale the community that we've been executing over the last couple of years. So the first part of it is I think we've completed the work to make sure that we have one way of contributing to the project. So there was a legacy way in which people who were at 2U were members of the community. In the spring, we changed that, and we'll talk about that. We have been focused on developing partnerships with mission-aligned organizations. I think you guys saw the keynote from Courtney Hills Macbeth, which I found to be particularly inspiring. And those sorts of organizations, I think, are going to be the key to scaling how we advance the project going forward. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We've worked on developing a go-to-market approach, so we understand what problems the platform solves for organizations, and we lean into making it as valuable as possible for organizations that are aligned with the mission that we're trying to accomplish, which we've already discussed. And we're going to intentionally in the next year work to attract additional sources of funding into the project so that we can move even faster than we have been. Okay. Again, it's very important, especially in open source projects where people come and participate freely and can leave freely, that everyone is on an equal footing and everyone feels like they can be as impactful in the project as anyone else. Meritocracy is now a pretty loaded word, but that's how we would like it to be a do-ocracy, a community where you get status by doing things, by participating, and there's no special status for anyone. So in March, thanks very much to Fanil, who was kind of one of the prime movers behind this, we moved 2U from a legacy mode of participating in the project to the core contributor program, which is the way that everyone else, including Axum engineers, gets commit rights in the project. So that was a big success for us. And I would say that's a mission accomplished moment for us. The second area where we've been investing in, well, this is great timing. I was actually gonna make sure that everybody had a chance to meet Tony, and Tony has just arrived. So Tony Busa from WGU here in the front of the room. We'll get to that in a minute. This is actually the WGU section. So if I'd gone through this before you got here, it would have been a little bit sad. So we introduced, I guess in August, a new concept, and actually we put it into the TOC charter in October, of mission-aligned organizations. And the idea was that there were lots of organizations that were already getting a ton of value out of Open edX, but were kind of bystanders. And we wanted to pull them in so that we could both leverage their thought leadership, but we could also have them contribute to the project and let them understand what that could mean for them in terms of how they evolve the product to support themselves and how they contribute to the project generally. So we were looking for organizations that have extensive experience with the platform. They're experts in learning and higher education. They have a mission that's focused on equitable access to higher education. And they have the ability, critically, and willingness to contribute substantial resources to the project. So I wanted to highlight our first ever mission-aligned organization. So we launched this in August. I guess in terms of how we were thinking about it, we rolled it into the TOC charter in October. And the same year, we've added WGU as the very first mission-aligned organization. So we're very excited by that. And I can't say how pleased I have been with what has happened since WGU has joined the community in a more intentional way. I want to highlight some of the contributions. So currently, they have 9 staff who are, we went from 0 people under org CLA to 9 over the last months. They have created 75 pull requests in the last 90 days across 8 separate repos and from 8 distinct authors. So I'm assuming, well, no, Tony has at least 1 pull request. I was going to say it's probably the manager who's not submitting pull requests. 2, okay. But this is an amazing accomplishment. I mean, I think the Open edX project, like one of the things that we know and we always try to work on is the complexity and the startup cost of understanding how to contribute. And the fact that the WGU team was able to hit the ground and really, sort of dig in and figure things out, amazing. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this scales. And I'll show you a little bit about how it has been scaling. This is that same data. What we can see here a little bit is the blue pull requests are open. The green ones are closed. So that means that we've got work that's been, the green is work that's been committed to the platform already. And the blue is work that we need to review. So if you're a maintainer on any of those repos, we'd appreciate your help getting that code landed. I don't think it's moved too fast while we're at the conference. Okay, so the plan to take this forward is to continue to add additional mission-aligned organizations over the course of the last year. So one thing I'll ask you is if you're aware of organizations that are using Open edX at scale that may be in a position to contribute development resources to the project, you should please highlight them to me because we'd like to know about them and understand if there's alignment there. And I wanted to transition to kind of a new thing that we're planning to do in the next year. And that is to create a fund for driving innovation on the Open edX platform that is sourcing funding from other organizations than Axum. Axum provides the fundamental support for the platform and will continue to. That's going to be a thing. But we think there's a lot of other opportunities to get funding from the broader world, from, talk about some sources, corporate CSR, funding grants, and philanthropic sources to help fuel the ecosystem and fund the advancement of the project. So we've given ourselves the goal in 2026 of raising around $1 million of additional funding to as an innovation fund. One caveat that I will share is a lot of times this funding is tied with a specific funder's interests, which is complicated, which means that there are cases where we would not take the funding because their interests are not aligned with our strategy or our roadmap. And there are other cases where the funding will not be ours to use completely freely, but will rather we'll need to use it to deliver a specific set of functionality. And just remember, so we're going to do, I just want to highlight that there may be a lot of questions about this, and we're going to ask that everybody put the questions into Wova so that we can deal with them in the lean coffee portion of it rather than have a Q&A directly after this conversation. And I wanted to talk about, we already have some evidence that this is a good plan. We have a grant from the Walmart Foundation in collaboration with the Digital Credentials Consortium to add some badge authoring functionality that will leverage AI in the authoring environment into the platform. And that will be kind of specified and delivered over the course of the next year. So by about this time next year, at the next conference, I think that we'll have this particular project will be done, but it's a very exciting work. And it's also a really productive collaboration with the Digital Credentials Consortium, which is a network of universities, but hosted out of MIT, focused on verifiable digital credentials, which we know are absolutely essential for driving kind of micro-credentialing and job-aligned work, job-aligned education. There we go. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, one of our goals has been sustainable maintenance of the platform. And we've had two ways that we've been attacking this problem. One is reducing the legacy code in the platform that is not valuable to most of our users, or basically we've been told that it's not valuable to you because you're not using it, but it still has a carrying cost, so we're deprecating it. At the same time, we are increasing the number of maintainers. So you see these two lines converging. This is where we started in say January of 2024, and over the course of the last year, thanks to the efforts of folks like, again, Fanil and Eden, and everyone who's been involved in the deprecation working group, we've made significant progress. I expect those two lines to cross each other this year. I also wanted to spend a second on I think everyone has seen this diagram, but over the course of the last year, we've talked a lot about our architecture and how we are focused on having a small platform kernel surrounded by a pluggable layer, and then beyond that, a marketplace of pluggable extensions. And that blue circle is what is the LMS that we have today, the reference implementation on top of the kernel. This has been discussed like in the BizDev working group, the architecture working group, the TOC. I think there's a lot of kind of mind share that this is the right approach, but we can talk about it in the lead. Sorry about that, guys. All right. So a little bit of like a reset and a reminder about the architectural vision. I would just want to say that this is important because it informs both the way we're improving the architecture of the platform, but it also informs the way we think about product, our product market fit, and also our go-to-market strategy, which will be based on building extensions on top of this small core, which will allow us to actually have potentially community-created, supported product spins on top of the core platform that serve different markets. And so over the course of the last year, we've made substantial gains in the extensibility of the platform, highlighting one here, front-end plugin slots, really introduced in the course of the last year. I've got the number here somewhere, but I think it's something like 56 current slots or some very high number. Someone in the community described it as a step function improvement in our ability to customize the platform. I really believe that's true. And there's been a lot of energy and excitement around it, and I'm really glad to see this finally come to fruition. In terms of backend plugins that are using Open edX event framework, this is a little bit of GitHub searching magic, and some of these plugins are probably experimental, but there's around 81 that I've found in GitHub. A really nice example is edX exams. So that's code that historically would have been committed to the core, which no longer is. It's now a plugin. And if you don't care about how edX uses exams, you don't need to know anything about it. You just know that they're listening to events from this other repo. As of TEAC, there were 54 plugin slots. So in the last, I don't remember when I guess the first ones were in the fall that they were, Redwood, yeah. So about this time last year. So in 3 releases, we've gone from 0 to 54. Very impressive. I think it clearly demonstrates that they're valued by the community. And then the design tokens migration landed. So yeah, let's get a big round of applause for that, for Brian Smith and everybody I know Peter Kolko isn't here, but Brian, who else was involved in that work? Oh, Adam Stankiewicz, yeah, exactly. So, team at edX, yeah, it was a really, really big community effort, and I think it will be I think next year we'll be saying was a step function improvement in our ability to theme. We've also focused on making the platform dramatically simpler. And anybody have any bets on what's going to be the next piñata? Anyone? If you don't know, the tradition of the piñata is after this talk, we'll go out in the yard and we'll bash a piñata with sticks and get out some aggression to celebrate some of the code that we hated the most, that we got rid of in the course of the last year. So anybody have an idea what we might be celebrating next year? Studio, who said that? No. I think it's going to be MongoDB. Yeah, I think it's going to be MongoDB. Something we've been dragging around for quite a few years that adds a ton of complexity and very little value. In getting rid of that will actually dramatically improve the sort of the operability and the cost of running the platform. So I'm super excited about that. Dave and Kyle did a talk. Nah, Dave's got 2 fingers up, but it's going to be. And so also in the course of this last year, we had the integration of the forums from a separate service into the LMS. Really makes the deployment story a lot simpler. Done in a modular way, so if you don't want to use OpenEdX's default forums, you don't have to. Integration of XQ into the monolith. So that's another service that's used for remote grading, especially in cases where people are grading coding assignments. That has now been integrated back into the platform. So another service, another database, another cache that you don't need to run. And then we're also part of the architecture story is making the platform just better. And I think Jenna is going to dive into the specific things that we did this year. But for me, highlight content libraries. This is a place where this innovation makes the platform just simply amazingly better than it was before. Content is free to move around in ways that only you can imagine. So having just-in-time learning, reinforcement, sort of spaced repetition learning, dynamic, personalized learning, all of these things will become possible as a result of having modular content. And then I wanted to highlight something. I'm a notorious last-minute worker, just so you know, but part of it was intentional this time because I like to pull in some conversations from the course of the week into the talk, and I wanted to talk a little bit about extensions for AI experimentation, which was both a talk that Juan and Felipe gave. It was also a conversation that same day, separately, without knowing what their talk was going to be about, we had with the TOC during lunch. And I think it's an area where it really makes sense for us to invest over the course of the last year in a very specific way. So historically, OpenEdX has, I would say, operated as a scaled-up learning laboratory. Its flexibility and extensibility, XBlocks, and the ability to have JavaScript in courses has allowed organizations to do really interesting experiments on the platform. And because of places like edX.org and other really large sites, those experiments can be conducted at a really, on millions of users potentially. I think that's one of the real superpowers of the platform. But what would that look like in the age of AI? Like we know, we saw Mairead's keynote, and then we heard from the panel. We know that there's going to, I don't think we know exactly how things are going to end up, but we do know that AI will advance and that it will become part of our daily lives and it will impact education. What if OpenEdX was the place where people experimented about how it will build the future of education? I think that's really, really powerful. And we've always said we don't want to be like, we don't want to decide how people use AI in education. We don't know enough to do that. And we don't want to lock people into any technology or other. But what if we could take that laboratory, the aspect of OpenEdX as a laboratory and optimize it for AI so that AI experiments could happen as rapidly as possible on the platform. So that's kind of the goal, is how do we reduce the time to implement and execute AI experiments? And again, great minds think alike. We had these concurrent conversations, so I think the next step there is I owe the TOC a one-pager, and I'll incorporate some of the stuff that Juan and Felipe did, and then we'll think about, I think what we're going to do, we were talking about like APIs for MCP and chunking and tokenizing to simplify the introducing chatbots and assistants into the platform, and I think that's where we'll focus. This will become probably an OEP, definitely a product proposal, and we can talk about it asynchronously in the community. All right, I probably went way over, but over to Jenna to talk about go-to-market and the platform roadmap.
I'm not even going to try the lapel mic, straight to karaoke mic. Okay, so Ed mentioned that part of the state of Open edX, we wanted to talk a little bit about the product market fit research that Axum has been focused on over the last 6 to 9 months. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how the output of that research is going to be translated into a platform strategy and the roadmap. So what's the plan going forward for the next 6 to 12 months or so? So we had a couple of goals going into this product market fit research. First goal was simply to start building or supporting the building of further brand recognition. So we already have the marketing working group doing great work in this space, the biz dev working group, but we wanted to see if we could push it even further. So moving from simple presence at events to thought leadership across the industry was one of the goals. We wanted to look at platform positioning and how some of this research could impact the actual roadmap in terms of feature development. And then we also wanted to explore how we as Axum could support the potential exploration and opening up of new markets to drive adoption of the platform as well. So those were the kind of goals that we went into this with. And this is the kind of the rubric or the criteria that we used in sort of developing this research. And I want to give a call out to Annie Cellini, who was instrumental. Raise your hand, Annie. Annie was instrumental in helping to drive a lot of this research at Axum. And so there were like 3 criteria that we were looking at when we were analyzing this data. The first was market dynamics, right? Generally, sort of separate from Open edX specifically, but what is happening in the market? What's happening in the open education space, the online education space? What are the trends? The second area was mission alignment. So this was a really important one for Axum. So at Axum, our mission is to advance the social and economic mobility of learners by opening up new opportunities for them across the workforce so they can build better lives for themselves and their families. So we wanted to make sure that any product development work that we did was directly in alignment with the Axum mission. And then the third area of criteria was, like, where are we already strong? What are the strengths of the Open edX platform that we can build on and continue to refine? And so we had a sort of a hypothesis that at the center, where all these 3, like a Venn diagram, where these intersect, what's going on in the market, what are the strengths of the platform, and what is our mission, that would be our product market fit. And so after quite a bit of research, we landed on this market opportunity that we're now going to test and drive forward. So this market opportunity is what we're calling skills-forward learning. You might have also heard this as sort of competency-based learning, career lines, micro-credentials, upskilling and reskilling. In a nutshell, it is about taking the outcomes of a learning experience and translating them directly into a job opportunity. So what skills is a learner going to come out of any given course or pathway or learning experience with, and how does that directly translate into an opportunity in the job market? And so in terms of how this opportunity is kind of aligned to each of these 3 criteria, when it comes to like what's going on in the market in this space, there's a ton of talk about micro-credentialing, non-degree pathways in addition to degree pathways, non-degree to degree transfers. There's a lot of work going on in the community college space, especially in the United States, but also globally, technical colleges around the world. When it comes to strengths of the platform, we're already quite strong in the space, right? A lot of the features that we need to support this use case, things like asynchronous learning environments, things like modular content. We've already been investing in a lot of these areas already. So this is a natural area for us to continue to build on. And then in terms of mission alignment, the key audience here are adult learners, right? These are learners who are looking to upskill, to reskill, to enter new job markets. And this provides opportunities for learners who may have not had access to traditional streams of education in the past. So opening opportunities for learners to gain access to education that they may not normally, or in mainstream settings may not have access to. So that's kind of the findings of the market fit research. In terms of the actual market, like who's going to be doing this, who's going to be adopting the platform in the space, there's a lot of different sectors that this is relevant to, right? So in the higher ed space, we have workforce development happening, upskilling and reskilling happening in both the for-credit and the non-credit space. So it opens up opportunities across the different types of offerings in the 4-year and 2-year institutions. In the national government space, there are national platforms, government initiatives, IGOs, and NGO opportunities that are all focused on workforce upskilling and reskilling nationally or regionally. And then in the corporate space as well, there's enterprise training, workforce development happening in the corporate space. And so what I love about this from a product point of view is that each of these sectors have a set of common needs. So we can be developing features for the platform in a very generalized way, but they can then be refined so that they can be delivered to the sector based on the relevant needs in that sector. And in terms of our focus at Axum, we decided that we would start here with the first two, so the higher education sector and the NGO sector, again, only because it aligns directly with our mission. But this doesn't mean that you're limited to that as well. Like these are sectors that we believe are going to open opportunities across the community for folks to explore. In terms of the current edX use cases, there's one thing in particular here I want to highlight, like one TLDR from this slide, is that we are already strong in this space, and that was very intentional, right? So we already have 20 countries around the world who are using Open edX to deliver upskilling and reskilling. Out of all of the enterprise adoptions, 75% of them focus on workforce development. In the higher ed space, most of Open edX instances are focused on continuing adult education or lifelong learning. So we're already building on a foundation that is already there, just to highlight that we're not starting from scratch. And when it comes to translating this product market fit research into strategy for the roadmap, it also turns out that we already have a foundation here as well. We've been sort of building toward this in small incremental steps or building blocks over the last probably 1.5 to 2 years. And I'm going to give you just 3 examples here of how we've kind of been building toward this in terms of laying the foundation on the product roadmap. So when it comes to learner data, right, so we know in this particular use case that personalization is really important, customization is really important, understanding individual learner needs is really important. And so we've been working on this kind of incrementally since Redwood. So in Redwood, we had the shift over to the event-driven pipeline, and Aspects launched. In Sumac, we had the release of individual learner dashboards. So for the first time on the platform, you can now pull reports based on how individual learners are doing. In TOC, just 2 weeks ago, we launched in-context metrics. So now course teams can take this data and view it in context of the course content that they're working on, so they can get very granular and fine-grained data at the individual problem level in the context of the course. In Almo, we're exploring custom learner grouping tools, and then we're going to build on that in Veriwood and beyond with potentially custom notifications and interventions tools. So you can see here how we've been evolving the learner data feature set to move us on a trajectory toward personalization. We still have a ways to go, obviously, but the foundation is there. Same thing for content modularity. So in Redwood, for the first time, we introduced content tagging. So you can take taxonomies, sets of tags that are skills or competencies, and align them to the actual content. So, if you complete this lesson, you will achieve this particular skill or this competency. In Sumac, TOC, and Almo, we've been focused on the content libraries overhaul, which is our sort of our big investment in modularized content. So now it's possible to create a lesson or a unit separately from the course, attach tags to it, and what we're focused on in Verawood and beyond is potentially being able to deliver those in a more modular way as well, so breaking out of that course structure toward custom pathways. And then with credentials, we launched the credential service in Redwood. We've been focused on building out more integrations with some of the major verifiable credential providers in the space. And in Verawood and beyond, we're exploring more granular badging, right? Being able to deliver credentials at the section level or the unit level. And so you can see how these start to stack up, right? We can start to track individual learners, how they're moving through the journey, deliver custom learning based on specific skills that a learner needs in order to get the job that they're looking for in the market. Again, these are all building blocks. All of these features are like the foundation, the kind of part of the core of the platform. And the idea is that we can build on top of them in order to meet specific market needs. But what I'd like to do now is take a minute to do a deeper dive into Sumac and TEAC, since these were the big two releases from the last year. So we had Sumac released in December of last year, and TEAC just released like a week ago. So huge kudos to everybody in this room who worked on those releases. All right, so we'll just do a quick round of highlights, some of the big highlights from these two releases. We have now huge investments in content libraries. If you are on a team that worked on libraries, raise your hand right now in this room. It's like it's probably like 20% of the room. So this was a huge cross-organizational endeavor. We had OpenCraft, Schema, EduNext, Raccoon Gang, Axum all involved in this project. With TEAC, you can now create units independently of the course, reuse them, sync updates to your courses, and reuse it in multiple courses. In-context analytics. Raise your hand if you worked on in-context analytics. Yes, another huge cross-organizational. We have Edley, Schema, Axum involved in this one, EduNext. So with in-context analytics, now we have the ability to track some of the learner data, engagement data in particular, in Studio. So course authors can track how learners are doing on content in the context of the content that they're building. Front-end plugin slots. Raise your hand if you worked on plugin slots. Yes, this was huge. So we have, this is just like a short list of the new plugin slots that we have, just from the authoring MFE and the learning MFE. There's like 24 plugin slots here. They're well documented. You can see for how easy it is now to go through and customize and theme your front end. Easier default on Xblocks. Raise your hand if you've worked on this, or Schema. Raccoon Gang. So this one I love because this request actually came out of the town hall in Cape Town. This was one of the kind of feature requests that came up organically in conversation. Like, why do we have to use a JSON field in order to turn on these advanced Xblocks? We have this catalog of Xblocks that everyone has created, but it's not as easy to use them as it should be. So we've been focused on fixing that. With TEAC, we'll have a set of default on Xblocks, toggle on, toggle off approach to turning them on and off. And then we're working on a better UI as well, kind of this App Store UI, in order to track all of the advanced Xblocks in your course. Tons of improvements to mobile. Last one, who worked on mobile? Huge improvements to mobile, especially on the UI side. We have improvements made to the Studio Home, to the custom dashboards. All right, so what's coming in the next 12 months? So we have Almo coming in December of 2025 and Verawood in June of 2026. So we continue to build on these themes, right? So in Almo, we're already well underway working on a number of hopefully transformational projects, both on the back end and the front end. So we have an overhaul coming to roles and permissions, which we know has been a major pain point for this community for a long time. So we're gonna make it easier to manage roles, to assign roles, to customize roles. Again, both back end and front end, we're exploring an administrative console design as well. Improvements to LTI 1.3, making it easier to reuse LTI tools across your courses. We'll full steam ahead on content modularity. So in Almo, you'll be able to create a full section of a course in a library and reuse it and sync those updates across courses. We're working on the MVP of a user grouping tool in Almo, potentially Verawood, but we'll see how that lands. And then the design tokens work is slated to fully land in Almo. For Verawood, of course, as we get further out, it becomes a little bit more coarse-grained, so take this with a little bit of grain of salt. But for Verawood, we're looking at continued improvements to roles and permissions, improvements to learner notifications, exploring flexible learning pathway delivery systems, and possibly some support for some competency-based specific tools. So that's where we're headed. And again, thanks to all of you. It's because of everyone in this room that we've been able to get this release, TOC in particular, up and running. Huge thanks to BTR, the product working group, the UX UI working group, marketing, biz dev. Give yourselves a round of applause because this TOC was amazing.
All right, so I wanted to ask Xavier, member of the TOC, elected by the community, founder and CEO of OpenCraft, to come say a few words about the upcoming Technical Oversight Committee community elections.
Thank you, Ed. Well, hello, everyone. So there is actually something that you said, Ed, in your presentation that I think is really important and relevant to the community election of the TOCs. When you talked about the transition of the 2U developers to become core contributors, you mentioned that there is one thing that's really important for a community to, an open source community to develop, is that everyone can feel they can contribute at the same level, regardless of where you live, who you work for, and etc. And I think there is another domain where this applies really well, is the TOC, because I know that the TOC sometimes is not, it's not really clear for everyone what it does and etc. But that's actually the decision-making place for a lot of the project big decisions. And we all have our place in there because there are 11 members of it. 3 of those come from the community, so from us, basically. Elected for 2 years, so we're arriving to the end of the last 2 years. So there has been Regis and Nachos with me. I've been on the board on behalf of the community, and it's time to renew that, to have a new round of election. So what I want to do now is to encourage you to apply. I know that sometimes governance might be a bit obscure. You might be wondering, do I really have something to do with this? If you're in this room, probably. So there will be a post published on the forum by Eden, a bit later today, I think, or maybe already, to register your candidature. So go have a look, see what it is, and apply. And maybe I'll use the couple of minutes that I have here, maybe to give you a bit of an overview of what to expect, what not to expect, maybe, from the TOC. So, like I said, there are 11 representatives, 3 from the community, 1 for learners, 1 for instructors, and 1 for core and administrators, basically. The rest of the 11 come from institutions, so there are AXIM, Harvard, MIT, 2U, the new one we have joined, like WGU. So it's kind of a diverse group, and the community has a big role in there. We are often being asked questions by the other members as to what is the community thinking or wanting to do on a bunch of things. So maybe also what the TOC is not, because first the TOC means Technical Oversight Committee, but the one thing that the TOC is not is just specifically about technical stuff. All kind of decisions related to product, to governance in general, and etc. are taken there. Another thing we don't do, so don't come to us for that, we don't take funding decision for that, you know, Axim or other people. but we don't control what each of the members do. So, it's just a discussion area. And also as a community, or even as an individual member, we don't have majority. So we can't take decision on our own. It has to be within the group. So what does the TOC does? So setting direction, reviewing things that come from the community naturally or that some of the members suggest. So I talk about AI strategy. So typically those are things that we discuss. Obviously not in isolation, it's in relation to what happens in the community. But that's where usually it's like the final decision might be taken. Things like in the past, like modularity, having APIs and etc., was a conscious and formal decision of the TOC. We also like have oversight over a bunch of things like the core contributor program. So when there are big decisions, we review them. TOC Elections is another one. Then there is also nice things, like for example, we are the first to know where the next Open edX conference is usually. So you get to decide a bit on that, it's super perk. Then like the things like shifting to core contributors is also something that we reviewed there. New partners, arrival of WGU, for example. So yeah, there are a lot of different things that we do there. Probably just between the 3 or 11 of us, we haven't really touched on everything. So that's why it's also important to renew a bit that. So if you have ideas or if you want to contribute or just like see a bit what happens there, don't hesitate to apply and see you there or elsewhere. Thank you.
Yeah, as Xavier mentioned, we have a process for nomination. You can self-nominate, and there's a template where you'll put some information about yourself and why you want to be a member of the TOC, why you should be chosen. I also want to take a moment to really thank Xavier. Xavier has been, he embodies openness, as you probably know, and he's been very focused on making sure that there are strong connections between the community and the Technical Oversight Committee. It's not meant to be a star chamber that makes decisions and then they're very mysterious, not at all. And Xavier has been very intentional about making sure that the minutes of the meetings and the processes for connecting with TOC members were very, very clearly articulated. So thank you, Xavier, for that. All right, I think I saw Vineet come in. So I need Vineet and Natalia, and they are going to introduce a proposal for a distinguished contributors program. Vineet did a really amazing write-up in the wiki, and I hope everyone has had a chance to take a look at it because it was a lot of work and it deserves your attention. But I'll hand the mic. Who wants to start? Minor. Oh, Minor. But are you
I can talk. We're here for support. Thank you, Ed. I thought I was going to go last, but that's okay. I think it's a good segue. All right, thank you, Ed, and thank you, everybody, for being here. Just on the way here, I was trying to figure out how do we really present this program and what this program is all about. And it just turned out we have sent some information a couple of weeks, couple of months back. What does it mean to celebrate the game changers? And we did start to receive some nominations, but one of the questions were raised that maybe the impact of this program needs to be much more broader. It goes too deep into the community. And there are people, and there gotta be people around us who don't have as much of visibility, but are doing a spectacular job. So let me just start by asking, I guess, everybody here probably have this badge here. If we can raise our hands, who all have badges? Almost everyone. Who's got one of the colored ones? Almost everyone. Who's got two? About half. Three? Oh my goodness. Four. How about a fifth one? Maybe next year. I just took a Sharpie, colored what existed. This is what I was thinking. What does it mean to be a distinguished contributor? We all have somebody around us who's done a spectacular job in different spaces, be it in the engineering space, be it as an evangelist, maybe as an innovator. These are the individual contributors, right? So we know somebody has done something that has raised the bar for the open edX on the world stage. Then we have perhaps some of the organizations who've been associated with open edX and have contributed, again in the same sense, to improve the image of open edX as a brand on the world stage, right? And recently, as we were discussing about these game changers, then we also know that in the recent past, there's been a lot of mission-aligned organizations who've also come together, and they're shaping what open edX is and what it will be going forward. So we haven't made a formal decision per se as yet, but that could also be one of the areas that we could recognize. And then we also have some rising stars. I think that was Natalia's one of the favorite things, that we do have a lot of people where we see the potential, and we know that these guys, these individuals, with proper guidance, will become the potentially maybe the next core contributors, maybe the next distinguished individuals, or maybe startup companies that could become a distinguished contribution, right? So this is what the program is all about. Program is about recognizing those individuals, those agencies, those organizations that have sustainably changed the landscape of where open edX is today. And they're continuously doing it. And you know, there are a lot of things that motivate people, and I think the right recognition is one of them. Monetary absolutely is fine. But I think in any organization, right level of recognition to individuals, through badges, through providing names such as distinguished engineers, distinguished innovators, distinguished evangelists, distinguished partners, and distinguished mission-aligned leaders. I think that goes a long way. And this is what the program is all about. Yeah? So our request here is that look around you. I'm sure we will find somebody who we know that deserve this Oscar, right? And maybe, Natalia, if you can talk about what the nomination process is, and then we can just go about seeking that, and then perhaps what the timelines are.
Maybe some of us received the email from Eden regarding the survey. Now we are trying to understand what the impact through contributions are made, and what contributions, because as Vinit mentioned, a lot of there are a lot of great things happening, and it's hard to keep track on that. So we are asking you to tell us what those contributions are, whether you feel that someone helped you, inspired you. And we have a survey. It's available from Discuss Forum. It's sent through the emails and at Slack. And I'll make sure to follow up send the survey again. So please, what we ask is that you fill what you feel that you fill in, what you feel that is important, and tell us who's behind that. So we are trying to collect the names, and after that we will be researching more, and I'll explain the process maybe other time because it's not yet polished. But for now, we just need to understand what is going on. So, and that's where we need you. Thank you.
All right.
Just say one really quick thing. I really appreciate the team that was up here talking about this program. This was a completely community-led proposal. They saw a need, they thought about how to solve for it, and they came together and put together something that I think is very powerful. Again, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the proposal in the wiki, I really strongly encourage you to do so. A lot of work went into it and a lot of great thinking is captured in that proposal.
All right. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, everybody.